have, together with that, American culture or current culture, modern age, dating. There are styles. There's our culture. Dating in Israel may be one way, America's another way. 50 years ago, maybe another way, 60, 70 years ago. In the early days, people went on a date. You went on the one train, and you went up and down the one train from Nulatz Avenue all the way to the Bronx, and then back, and that was the date. More elaborate date was to go to Kennedy Airport. I forgot what it was called then, Idlewild, maybe that was a different airport, Kennedy Airport, and you sat by the gate, and you watched the planes go up and down for a relaxing environment. And then another way was to go to East Flatbush, a little out of Crown Heights, and walk up and down Remsen Avenue in a quiet street. A meeting, and everybody got married, and most live happily ever after. But today we have a different style, and there's like expectations and what you're supposed to do. Some cultures still meet in the living room. I know COVID actually revived a little bit the old-fashioned dating. You got a lot of homes in Williamsburg, Borough Park, Flatbush. People rented out their back house or front house, and you would go in and sit down. And so how does that all match up together? Yes, it's a little bit of a challenge, but with seichel, common sense, good directives, normal friends, and most of all, a mentor, a mashpia, a bochur. Whether you have a mashpia, quote unquote mashpia, real mashpia, it's up for debate, but someone who you trust, who you can consult with all these questions. But just a minute of hakdama, that today many people struggle with the question, how do I know I'm ready to date? Or how do I know I'm ready to get married? Maybe I'm not responsible enough. Am I responsible enough? Maybe I don't have enough money. Today, money is so important. Everybody wants financial stability. We're sick and tired and fed up of living, the old life purely on emunah and barely paying bills and having to get all the scholarships and all the discounts and all the frum food stamps, rent subsidy, welfare, and Medicaid, all of that together. And the women want more financial stability. They want to be able to spend, and everything became so expensive. So maybe I need to figure out how am I going to support a family? What's going to be my career? And I'm not there yet. So who said because I'm 22, I'm 23, I'm not ready? Second, someone mentioned they don't hear Rabbi Jacobson. He's going to come on in a minute.
He's on. I'm here.
And second of all, maybe I'm not mature. People talk about boys and girls dating. Boys and girls. Somehow it's still in our lingo. I would say boys and girls. These days, boys and girls don't get married. Men and women get married. Amol, boys and girls got married. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Today, 22, 20. It's a young woman and a young man, but maybe I'm not mature enough. Maybe I don't have my life figured out enough. Maybe my values, I'm still figuring out who I am and what's my priorities. Maybe I struggle with some mental or emotional issues. Various things. Maybe as Bochur, I've been exposed or to struggle with unsneous things, different things like that. So maybe I'm not ready. So my parents don't know me. Well, these are good questions. And the answer is, our program is supposed to get you ready for that. Working the Hasidus program for all the years in Yeshiva with Abisal Davenen and the Hasidus and mostly what's called Avoida. Avoida, I know it sounds, I'm not challenging the system, but you all have it a little bit. We all have it. Going through the Chabad system, you're learning the Sichas, the Maimarim, the Chassidus. We work on ourselves. That's part and parcel of going through the Yeshiva system. You work on yourself, Birur Hamidus, Severen Ashtikal Mensch, to dominate the ego, not to be so selfish, more thinking about the Ebershter, thinking about his kashros, thinking about others. And then when you're through the system and you have your proper ideas, and opinions because it's durchgelernt, Shasa Paiskin, or the Rebbe's approach to life and different things like that. So we have experience of whatever as a Jew, as a chassid. So you should have your opinions ready to go and your philosophies ready to go. And now you have your maturity that hopefully, your ego and myself and me, myself and I, as not lav davke the priority, and everything has to be my way and what I want, and hopefully abyssal menschlichkeit, abyssal edelkeit. So you're ready to take on the challenge. You don't have to have so much experience. People have a big time on the yeshiva system, why we don't teach bias Yehudi. Like in the high school and seminary, there's so many classes about a Jewish home and about responsibility and about relationship and about parenting and different ideas. And the yeshiva it just flies by. And it's a taina. There's some improvement to that. Perhaps these podcasts on all different angles is part of the solution, and very good. It's to all the organizers, and there's many online and different things happening in the Frum Welt, the Chabad world, preparing young men and women for marriage. But for Bochurim, and this is meant to be for Bochurim here, we have to realize that the traditional program of Chabad Chassidus, Yeshiva, Miftzayim, Nigle, Chassidus, Davening, Avodah, if you take it in, it is all about preparation.
Need anything, I'm here, okay?
It's about being a mensch. It's about responsibility, accountability, sensitive. Not everything has to go my way. Learning how to listen to Azulas, Avos Yisrael, and it's all there. There's plenty of things, and you can go on the journey. And if you have all these questions, Shua B'Reiv Yayitz, talk to your parents. My parents don't understand me. Talk to a sibling. Talk to a friend. Talk to a mashpia. Talk to a dating coach they have today. Some shadchanim are very good. And you can get a good feeling about yourself if you're ready. And it shouldn't stop you. Most of these questions, many times, sometimes you have to be honest, and maybe someone is not yet ready. But many times it comes from a general fear and anxiety. It's too much. Marriage. It's such a big responsibility. I'm not ready. And some people are the other way around. Oh, they get married, and they get married, and all of a sudden they're completely not ready for marriage, and they come into marriage, and it's a churban because they have no idea what responsibility means, getting up on time, being accountable for somebody else, managing an account, etc., etc. So with the proper patience, we can alles durchsetzen. But it's good not just to jump into it, but actually to make such a cheshbon nefesh. Sit down with two friends, sit down with your parents, sit down with a shadchan, and make a cheshbon nefesh and talk. This is my philosophy on this. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. And am I okay? Ask for feedback. And when you're ready to go, you're ready to go. So, l'chaim, chodesh Adar, chodesh of Simcha. We should have many Simchas. And I pass the mic to Rabbi Jacobson.
Reb Mendel, you can hear me and see me? Kannst du euch?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much to my dear cousin, Rabbi Mendel Lipsker, and to the organizers, Rabbi Zalman and Rebbetzin Blooming, for organizing all of this, and everybody who's gracing us here with your presence, and everybody who was involved. Thank you very much. So please feel free. I guess, Mendel, you announced about the chat, right? That everybody could post any question you would like into the chat, and we will be addressing them. If you want, one of us should specifically address it, Rabbi Lipsker, myself, you could specify it. If not, one of us will address it. If somebody else has what to add, I guess he'll add. I'm just going to open up very briefly before we begin with the questions with just a general, a few words of Hagdamas, a few words of introductions that may be helpful and relevant. The first thing I want to say is, what is the function of what we call courtship or meeting of a young man and a young woman? What is the function of it? So some people will say, well, I want to get to know the person. I want to know who, who I'm setting up my house with, Be'ezer Hashem, right? And that's, of course, true. But it's very important to understand that we barely get to know a person truthfully through such meetings. What we really learn about a person comes often much later. Sometimes it takes so many years. And it's important to understand that, because if a person is going to really feel that after these and these encounters, I really know everything about my second half, sometimes we could be very shocked by what happens later in life. I think it's much more honest to understand the truth. That when we're meeting somebody, what we really want to know is if this is the person I want to travel with on the journey of self-discovery throughout my life. You know, life is like a hike. It's like a journey, right? Yetze Adam lefoloi v'lavedosei adei arev. Neshama is a mahalach v'nasatim lecha mahalcha beinoim demeila. Life is a langenesia me Hashem. It's adei gever koinonu v'darkei yechpots. It's called Yesharim Darkei Hashem. It's a derech. Ki yadativ l'man asher yitzav banav es beisei v'shamru derech Hashem. The path of life. Everybody has their path in life. It's a hike. And the hike goes up mountains and goes down slopes. Sometimes we have to jump off a cliff. Sometimes we have to climb heavy boulders. We have to help each other get up. Sometimes we trip, we stumble, we fail. I don't know everything that's going to happen on the hike. I don't even know the person's skills to be able to go through the hike intimately and thoroughly. But I know you're the person I want to go on this hike with. You're the person I want to travel with on this incredible journey of discovering your life, my life, our life, and building, building, turning our homes into a mishkan, into a Beis Hamikdash. So it's very important. In other words, you're the person that I want to be able to be with throughout this journey of discovery. That's what you want to know. And to be that person, I should be able to be that person for you, and you should be able to be that person for me, is very, very powerful. And then we begin to discover life together. Don't go into it thinking you have mastered the other person. We barely know ourselves. It's a lifelong journey to figure out yourself. You think in a few weeks or even in a few months, you're going to figure out another person. That's number one. Number two, don't ignore things that come up. Sometimes people say, you know, there's red flags, but it's nothing. It's important. If something is not important, okay. Discuss it with somebody you really trust, as Rabbi Mendel said, but don't ignore anything, because what may seem as small and insignificant, you may be dismissing because you don't want it to be something, but maybe it's very, very important. Maybe this is a red flag. So don't ignore things. Just bring it up to somebody that you can trust, somebody who has das, somebody who has experience, somebody who cares about you, somebody who knows about life. I'm not talking about just to talk to anybody. I'm talking about somebody that you really trust and you really look up to, somebody who understands, has das, has a maturity. This is extremely important. Another thing I would say is it's very important to be able to truly establish the fact that relationships are difficult and successful marriages require a lot of avodah. And the more I'm ready to work on myself, the better I can have a relationship with somebody else. A relationship with somebody else is first and foremost a real relationship with yourself, a real connection with yourself in a deep, authentic, pneumistic way. The more self-awareness there is, the more I have my issues worked out, the more I could really be there for another person. Because without that, I start confusing. Shali, shalcha, shalcha, shali. What your issues become my issues become your issues. Shali, shalcha, shalcha, shali is nishkin seder. So there is that clarity that comes from avodah pnimis, from internal avodah. The last thing I want to say before we go over to the questions is a general comment about this time in life. And I want to say something I had a schus to hear from the Rebbe It was Shabbos Parshas Chayis Sora Tovshin Memches. I was a young Yeshiva Bochur, and the Rebbe made an incredible observation. The longest parsha in Torah, one of the longest parshas in Torah, is Eliezer finding a shidduch for Yitzchak and Rivka. Avram sent him out to Haran to go find a shidduch, and he finds Rivka. It's more than 60 psukim. You would think that the focus of the story should be the wedding. Rivka comes to Yitzchak, and they meet. That should be the focus. That's one pasuk. That's one pasuk at the end after 67 psukim. It's one pasuk that Yitzchak got married to Rivka, and he loved her, he cherished her. And Yitzchak found comfort sorrow. The crux of the story is the search for the shidduch. Avram Avinu talking to Eliezer, and then Eliezer talking back, and then the whole oath, and then Eliezer taking the camels and traveling, and then coming to the well, and then doing the whole tefillah with Hashem, and then it actually happening, and then going to Lavan Psul's Rivka's parents' home, and then telling over the whole story, and the negotiations, and the wheeling, and the dealing, and they don't want to, and they have to ask Rivka, and then they go back, and then one pasuk about the tachlis. The Rebbe then was speaking at the for the Kinus HaShluchim, and the Rebbe spoke about how Shlichus works. It would be very nice if every Shlich goes out, and right away you bring into the chuppah every Jew with Hashem, and it's all perfect. But most of the work of a Shliach is the relationship. It's building the relationship. It's building the connections. It's the hachana. It's the hechsher mitzvah. And people get very turned off, like, what's the tachlis? Let's just get to the tachlis. No. This is the avodah. This is the avodah of searching, of removing the obstacles, of getting to that point. And why am I saying this to you? Because the Torah here is telling us a general blueprint for life. Every tkufa in life has its challenges and its blessings. What I find very often, and it's painful, and it's true both for young men and young women, is that people often think that until they're not engaged, until they're not married, life stops. It's like you reach a certain age where you become ripe, the grape becomes ripe, and now life stops until you get married. And that's not the approach. The whole yesod of Yiddishkeit, especially the way it's explained in Chassidus, the Mishnah says in Kiddush, every day is priceless. Every journey in life represents an ultimate tachlis, a destination. You all know the story with the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe said it over. I remember I heard it from the Rebbe Shabbos Parshas Pinchas Tovshin on Aleph. The Rebbe Rashab said they should sing a niggin because he wanted to say a maimer, and the Bochur wanted to hear the maimer, so they sang the niggin swiftly. So the Rebbe Rashab interrupted them, and he said, "Das ist the seder von a chitzen, nicht von a pnimi." A chitzen, which means an external person, nothing is done authentically. I'm always on to the next. But a pnimi, vumen is, these were the words of the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe repeated them. Vumen is men ganzen. If I'm here, I'm present. I'm here fully with my full presence. So when you're singing a niggin, it's not just a hachana for a maimer, so let's get it over it. No, the journey itself is the destination. Shabbos Pinchas Nanalef, it's an unbelievable sikha. The Rebbe explained that every moment in life, that is essential to the entire kavanah of the entire creation and existence of the world. There's no such a thing as a small detail. If it's a detail, it's negeya and atzmus, it's an indispensable note in the cosmic symphony, if you wish. It's very painful when people put their lives on hold. Yes, you went out with one person, it didn't work. You're on a second person, maybe you're a third person, maybe you're on an eighth person. It's frustrating, and it could be painful, and there could be disappointment. And it's important to have a support system and to have people that you're speaking to, especially if you invested so much and sometimes painful things happen. And it's important to acknowledge all that. But never, ever feel that life stops until the moment that the chasana happens. That's not the case. Every moment is priceless. Suck the marrow out of life. Seize the day. You wake up in the morning, my father told me that he heard from Rabbi Chadikov that the Frierdiker Rebbe said that the name Hayom Yom means as the tog zol zayin a tog. Hayom Yom, the day should be a day. Make every day count. Don't just be a victim of a system or a victim of somebody who disappointed you. And don't think that because you're not engaged, chas v'shalom, you're valueless and inconsequential, especially in certain societies without family, you feel that you don't fit in. These are normal things. But if the fact that somebody asks you, when are you getting engaged? Some people make wise comments. It's not easy to hear, but it's important for you to have that internal dignity and utilize your life well. Get involved in something that's meaningful. Whatever it is in your life, Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chsadim, be productive, be successful, make a difference, challenge yourself, stimulate yourself, use your time to grow. Do not use the journey time as just time to waste and squander and wait for the next moment. Apnimi, vumen is men in ganzen. And Hashem should give you and all of us tremendous hatzlacha and direct you in the right path to be able to find what you need and what you want and what you're searching for, so that each and every one of us should be able to fulfill the shlichus of our neshama here in this world, ultimately l'sakin olam b'malchus shendalid yud. Thank you. Reb Mendel, du bist da. You hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, I hear. Sorry, I'm muted just to have your voice come through clearer.
So we have a question here. We have a question.
Yeah, so there's two questions, positions. There's a chat and there's Q&A. So the Q&A has quite a few questions already, and the chat has one question. Let's ask the people to put the questions in Q&A better. You can answer the first question in the chat, and then Rabbi Jacobson, I think it looks like it's for you, and then we'll move on to the questions and answers in Q&A, and then perhaps between the questions, throw in some dating advice.
So the first question that came in on chat is, how do you know if this is the person you want to go on the self-discovery journey with? Very good. Right? Let's go back to the beginning. It's very nice. How do I know this is the right person? So obviously, there's the elements that only you can answer. There's the element that only you can answer because, to put it in the Gemara's language, 40 days before you were created, there's a baskel that came out, bas ploini leploini. Somebody belongs to you. You belong to somebody and somebody belongs to you. I don't hear your baskel. Only you hear your baskel. Nobody can hear your baskel. Rabbi Groner was the Rebbe's longtime secretary from Tufshin Test, 1949, all the years. And he used to tell a story, and it's published now also in the first sefer of his diaries, Hamasker, because he put it in his diary. Rabbi Groner got engaged with his Rebbitzin, Tzolanga Yonin, Rebbitzin Yehuda's Groner, Nigurevich, in Tufshin Yudalit, Tevis Tufshin Yudalit, the beginning of 1954. And remember, he was already a personal secretary of the Rebbe for 5 years. And those are the early years when the Rebbe, had more time and shepherded the Chassidim, especially the Bochurim, in the closest way, in a very revealed way. And this was his own personal secretary. So Reb Leib asked the Rebbe the most natural question after he met her a few times. I don't know how many times. He said, should I finish the shidduch? Should I complete the shidduch? And I don't know if you know what the Rebbe answered him. The Rebbe Leib would tell the story, and it's not published from his diary. The Rebbe told him an unbelievable answer. This is the Rebbe told to his own personal masker, maybe the closest or one of the closest people, Begashmi, is physically in close proximity to the Rebbe. The Rebbe told him these words. The Rebbe said, when it comes to deciding who is your match, who is your spouse, ich kann dir nicht helfen. I can't help you. Dein Tate kann dir nicht helfen. Your father can't help you. Dein Mama kann dir nicht helfen. Your mother can't help you. Dein Seichel kann dir euch nicht helfen. Even your cerebral logic can't help you. Nor dein Herz. Only your heart can help you. If I'm not mistaken, my brother told me that he heard the story from Reb Leib, and he said that the Rebbe pointed to the heart. If I'm not mistaken, it doesn't say, it's not printed in the book that he pointed to the heart. He said, nor dein Herz. He said, Oib, if your heart is gravitating to it, then it's good and you should complete the shidduch. Now, what did the Rebbe mean, if I may explain? The Rebbe didn't mean that we shouldn't get advice from people. Of course, you should get advice from your father and your mother, especially if you have a great relationship with your parents and your parents are people who are confidants and you trust them and you cherish their opinion. Of course, you should get advice. And of course, you should get advice from the Rebbe. But the Rebbe meant ultimately there's a baskel that you have to hear. It's your shidduch. It's your relationship. Deep, deep down, it's my neshama, and it's your destiny for life. So that's number one. After saying that, which I think is very important, I'll just say a few things that I think, at least for many people, it becomes very important. Who is the person you want to go on this hike with? I would say you want a person who's not self-centered. You want a person who will have empathy. You want a person probably who's not rigid, who's not uptight, who's not stuck in their ways and stubborn. You want a person who has midas tovus. Midas tovus, somebody who's kind, somebody who's empathetic, somebody who's understanding, somebody who has good values, somebody who's not selfish, who's not narcissistic, who's not self-centered. You want somebody who's kind. A good mensch, a kind person. You want somebody who's flexible. You want somebody who has yiras shamayim. Yiras shamayim means they have real values. They have absolute values. They have yiras shamayim. They have things that they care about. You want that your values should be aligned. You want to build a house that both of you want that type of house. You want to raise a family. You want that your values. It's very important because, life is complicated and there's a lot of different paths, So you want to make sure that your values align. You want to make sure that you can be honest with each other. I should be able to be vulnerable with you. You should be able to be vulnerable with me. We should be able to hold hands even in difficult moments. Holding hands, I mean spiritually, emotionally. I want that I should feel that you will support me 1,000%, and you will feel I will support you. We don't have to always agree with each other on the hike. You may want to go right, I may want to go left. You may go up to find the spot where we could see the whole Manhattan. I may not want to. I may be tired. I want to just go back down and go out to eat, whatever it is. But we should be able to learn to trust each other, to really be dedicated to each other, loyal to each other. And I would say one more thing. You want a person who's really ready to grow, who's ready to work on themselves, who's ready to be humble, who could listen, who wants to be challenged, who's ready to hear real criticism. I don't mean negative criticism, but real critique. Like the Rebbe Rashab says, cherish constructive critique because that will raise you to the greatest heights. I think these are some of the qualities that in a very general way would probably be very important and very helpful for the journey of life.
Good. Okay. Again, let's request the questions and answers. Go into the question and answer.
Mendel, I see some more in chat, so I don't know.
I'll go to the second one in chat, and then we'll move on to the question and answer.
So let me read the next question, and maybe you'll answer it. Should Bochrim get a job prior to marriage? Shittas Harambam, yeah? Should we get a job prior to marriage? Is it preferable for a Bocher? No, just to stay in 770 in Yeshiva and learn. Should the decision be based on where the Bocher is going to be most productive? Some Bocher will be productive in Yeshiva in 770 or another Yeshiva. Some Bocher won't. They're going to waste their time. So let them go get a job. That's the question of Mendel.
Okay, so you
go.
Okay, there's of course exactly what you said, and it's in another question in the question and answers as well. Shittas Harambam, derech bal ideya, that a person should first have a malacha that should get parnasa, then he should get a house, and then he should marry a woman. There's such an opinion. There are such cultures, even by Frume Yidden in different areas. Aber the Shulchan Aruch steht nicht azay. That's not the bottom line, and especially our advanced culture in the last 100 to 100 years is nicht azay. Nor then, a person feels, should I get a job? I mean, many people are working side jobs, a bissel geld, a bissel this on the side. You know what I mean? But as a preparation for marriage, you don't need a job. That's clear. You need to be a structured, responsible person and not a time waster. Thus, yeah. So if a person is sitting in yeshiva and just being pushed through the system and barely learning, 10 minutes and then yapping and then phone, So get yourself organized, get yourself into a schedule. If the job will get you into a schedule, doesn't hate. But if you have you want a job in chinuch, whatever will get you into a certain structure and you're feeling productive. But if a person is in yeshiva and feeling productive because later on, to absorb blig voltaire, and now you have the opportunity without rechaim al tzavare, without being responsible in so many ways to a family, which will take so much of your time. And now you want to learn. It's and learn. So the question is, to get a job prior to marriage, it's not a necessity. But if you're just in yeshiva because a job is not look nice on, the fetish not. If you're just wasting time, then move to something structured and talk to your mashpia about this, obviously.
It's important to remember what Chazal say. Shimum mevila de batala. And much more. When people are bored, when people are lonely, people become broken, people end up in all types of situations. As the Rambam famously says, I think at the end of Hilchos Isurei Bia, right, that as the Alter Rebbe said, in a pustke kleibt sich, in an empty space where there's nothing, something is going to fill the empty space. So remember, if our life is empty, if I'm just waking up every day whenever I want, and there's no structure, there's no meaning to my life, there's nothing exciting me, ultimately the results can be catastrophic. So just to be able to look at your friends and say, I'm in yeshiva, it's very nice, but the main thing is pnimius, who you are as a person. So really, it's so important to structure your life in a meaningful and productive way. Of course, whatever you choose, there should be a certain amount of the day that you're dedicated to learning, because at any age, learning Torah every day is oxygen, physical oxygen, spiritual oxygen, emotional oxygen.
Good. By the way, through the questions, I think if you have any specific advice about dating, and I think people want to hear that, there's a question here. Is this a discussion of general dating or specific topics? Well, a little bit general and mostly specific topics, what people want to hear as the questions come in. Here's a difficult question, Rabbi Jacobson, I think you should answer first. Any advice for someone dating a second time around after divorce or a broken engagement?
That's a very important question. And briefly, the advice that I would give for somebody who's dating after divorce or a broken engagement, which of course can be compared to divorce, but it's a difficult experience. I think it's important to answer a few questions very honestly. And you may need the help of somebody to give you feedback on these questions. And the question has to be, what caused the divorce? Who's accountable for the divorce? Maybe both of us, that's fine. But what was my role in the divorce? Now you could say nothing. I was a victim. She was a perpetrator. She was impossible. She had narcissistic personality disorder. She had borderline. She had mental illness. I'm a good guy. Maybe it's true. But the question is something else. What was still your role in the divorce? Meaning, were you passive for many years? Did you ignore a lot of things? Did you allow yourself to become a doormat? Did you allow yourself to become a shmata? Did you allow yourself to be abused? That's a role you played. In other words, you have to be very, very honest. What role did you play in this divorce? Whatever it is, as a perpetrator or as a victim. Number two, how did the divorce affect you? How did the broken engagement affect you? Again, what was your role and how did it affect you? Who are you today? These questions are extremely important because chas v'shalom, you don't want to go into a situation where new stuff come up and you did not really use the crisis. The greatest mistake in life is to allow a crisis to pass without turning it into an opportunity for extraordinary growth. So if you can answer these questions, what was my role in the divorce and in the broken engagement? Either as a mazik or as a nizik. Maybe those are sharp words, but maybe either as a mashpia or a makabel, either as somebody who was part of the problem in one way or another way. Maybe I allowed it to happen. Maybe I was an enabler. Maybe I was part of it. Maybe I was myself clueless, etc. Number two, What did I learn from it? Did I work on myself? Did I emerge from it? Am I a different person today? Do I have more awareness today? Or no, I'm just trying with another person. Don't just say I'm trying with another person. So that's also very, very important to be able to establish. And the last thing I think is very important to ask myself, am I emotionally scarred by this? And is it going to contaminate the new relationship? Do I have what it takes to go into the new relationship with chayas, with enthusiasm, with openness, or I'm going to be, bitter and angry and resentful? So those are important things. Has there been forgiveness? Has there been reconciliation? Am I ready to move on, or I'm going to schlep that toxicity into the new relationship? So I think these are some of the things that we have to ask ourselves, and then it's a very honest conversation.
Thank you. Good. Yes. Another question. What are the consequences if I marry someone not by the shidduch system? Why is that terrible? I'm not sure. Does that mean find your own shidduch? Does that mean someone who you got to know in high school in a non-kosher way and now you want to get married? And what is so terrible if I just find my own idea, by a Shabbos table or whatever it is? I'm assuming that this is the question. So in general, from stories that I've heard from reliable sources, the Rebbe's shita is obviously l'chatchila and b'diavad. L'chatchila, we have an established system, which is the way to go. What if a person doesn't feel themselves as part of the system? I have no hope. We know how many shidduchim happened by friends' suggestion. So if something came your way and it already happened and something is there, then of course you were by a Shabbos table and you happened that someone else was there. So you can ask a friend or a shadchan to get involved. But most probably the question is more, what if I was hanging out in a bar or when I was wherever at a party and I met someone and we struck up a conversation and now what happens? So I have to say, no, this was a non-kosher meeting and therefore it needs to stop and start over in the shidduch system. So I've heard quite a few stories from the Rebbe, especially in the early Yuds, that there was a time both with one individual and with a group of a few, and the big Hasidim around Hala came to the Rebbe with a crisis, what to do. The young men and ladies, the Talmidim were hanging out with some Talmidas, and it's terrible, and it's a crisis. And the Rebbe's approach was, that if it's already happened with the other, don't make a crisis and call it something terrible. Use it as an opportunity, and if they're compatible, machashidduch. The same thing happened in the Friedrich Rebbe's times in Brinois in the early days. Such a Maisa where there was a yeshiva, and it was later on the moderators here can figure out if to publish this or not for the eternal podcast. But it happens. It's just reality. Dating is about being honest as much as possible. And there was a story that they came in Holla, gemacht a Sitzung in Benoit, that they found Brivelach, letters going back and forth between a Bochur and Yeshiva and a seminary in Yer. And didn't know what to do. It was such a crisis. They decided that they can't just mail a letter to the Friedrich Rebbe. They're going to send a special shliach to the Friedrich Rebbe he was going anyway for a wedding or something. They're going to give him a personal letter. He's going to hand it to the Friedrich Rebbe. And should we throw him out of yeshiva? Should we give him a knas? And basically the Friedrich Rebbe's answer was they should get married as quick as possible. Okay, it's called Bidi Eved and very fine family in Lubavitcher. So it's not a scar or it's something wrong. You were born in original sin, and it's a terrible thing. When we're talking about b'di'evets, and today there's many a situation of b'di'evets. You do the best you can. You steer it in the right direction, and you make it work. So I can say there are terrible consequences. But if it was not counseled and not using friends afterwards and not really analyzing and just being a premature, immature falling in love, that can end up in a difficult life with a difficult relationship. Because if it was just left to flow, I need to get married, I fell in love, you have to be more serious about it. And Be'ezer Hashem, alt wird sein, b'shot teva mutzlachas. Rabbi Jacobson, next question.
Yeah, on chat, somebody says there's a problem, and that is that the girls in the profiles put economic stability as a condition. How do you respond to this? They all want the same thing today. They want that the boy should have economic stability. And somebody else says, how would you implement the 5 languages of love in dating and generally in Judaism? So in terms of your first question, I would say, yeah, perhaps some people, this is a condition for them. And okay, if this is their condition, this is their condition. But to tell every bacher chas v'shalom to stop learning and to go get a job, I don't think that is at all appropriate. I think what many young women want is they want a responsible person. They want a person that when the right time comes, he or she is not just going to be on the couch all day and rely on the manna to fall from heaven, but it's a person who's proactive and a person who's going to be creative and a person who's going to do their hishtadlus b'derech hateva or b'rachik Hashem alekech b'chayla shetasa. But a bacher who's sitting and learning and steiging away in nigla and in halacha and in chassidus and in davening and in working on themselves and in growing as a person, saturating their days and nights with limud HaTorah, ein lecha davar l'mayla mizeh. You don't have anything that is greater, that is sweeter, that is more authentic. And our entire existence is based on the emunah that Hashem runs the world, and we do what we have to do. And at the right time, if you're talking about a serious person. So if it's a bacher who's just in yeshiva again as an excuse because there's nothing else to do, I'm alive because I never died, I understand the concern. But if you're talking about, and I think we all have to ask ourselves that question, if you're talking about a person who's productive, but now my productivity is expressed in limud HaTorah, then it's the greatest productivity in the world. It becomes the foundation for everything. Because a bacher who's really learning and really davening and really working on themselves, they make the best husbands in the world. Because what does it mean to be a good husband? To be a good husband means that you're accountable, you're authentic, you have real yiras shamayim, you have humility, you have bittul. You can transcend your own ego and create space for another person. You don't live in the shadow of self-consciousness and yeshus. So that's the greatest hachana for marriage is to have a home where there's refinement. You want a home where there's refinement, there's edelkeit, there's modesty, the Shechina dwells over there. And a person who's saturated with Torah and Avodah, the home is a beautiful home. It's an edel home. The communication is refined. The midas are good midas. I'm talking not about just learning in an abstract way so that people could say, I am a genius. I'm talking about learning in a way that we internalize it. Like the Tzemach Tzedek said, Nishna was du was gelernt Torah, the Torah had gelernt dir. Not only I learned Torah, the Torah taught me. That's as far as that. In terms of the 5 languages of love, I thought it was a very helpful model. For those who don't know, there was an author who explained that different people have different love languages, right? And when a person is married, and also with your children, it's important to find out what their love language is, because you may do things that are very nice, but it's not really what they're looking for. And that's very important. This is where communication comes in. And I'm just going to say this as a yesod. We often believe that a good relationship means I have to guess. I'm a Navi and you're a Navi. I know everything my wife is thinking. My wife knows everything I'm thinking. Are the Yechidei Sgula that you could finish the sentence of your wife and she could finish yours? And there are such Yechidei Sgula. But to turn that into the normal standard of a relationship, communication. Tell me what you're feeling so I'll know what you're feeling. And I need to tell you what I'm feeling. And when you hear what I'm feeling, don't respond with judgment or anger. Listen, be attentive, make space for it, just like I need to make space for what you're feeling. So it's extremely important during dating and later, especially later, to communicate how I'm feeling, and even small things. Communication doesn't mean to talk about big, grand ideas. In fact, couples that only speak about big, grand ideas are asach tzados. Good relationships, you talk about kleinigkeit, and you talk about small things, because It's like Chassidus says in mitzvahs, it's not how big it is. It's the nekuda that there's a relationship. And the connection is emphasized in the smallest of things. The smallest of things could become the biggest of things, like the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva. So b'meila, it's important to learn the other person's language. And that takes humility and it takes a lot of attentiveness. Yeah.
Good. I just want to comment that, I don't know, some contemporary marriage consultants have different opinions about the 5 love languages. If it's just from a few years, it caught on and it was as if, oh, this is the night of the Bible, this is the solution to all problems if you figure it out. And now people are a little bit shifting from it that, it's a good idea, but lav dafka will help, but there's maybe other ideas that can work as well. Just for a comment. Yeah. Next question in the question and answers. Should age stop a person from starting to date? Let's say somebody is a Bochur 20, 21, even if he has all the qualifications to start. And the answer is absolutely let him date. The Rebbe was very strong of the opinion that if people are ready to get married early, 2021, the Rebbe said many times, Rabbi Seinu Nesienu, early 20s. That was the Rebbe's lashon. The shit of our Rabbeim was to look for shidduchim in your early 20s. And there were exceptions. In other words, the other ones were exceptions. And 2021 is not too early if the person is mature and ready. And today it's becoming more and more common. Some people say, well, it's too young, you're not responsible yet. Well, obviously, the question was if somebody has the qualifications, then go for it. I want to just say about the question that you asked about financial stability. Maybe some people put it on their profile, and what they mean is that the person has an understanding or responsibility not to have to live a tight mitzumtzumdika life, because many chassidische Yidden say, well, was is Geld? Was darf ein Geld? We darf haben Simcha, Davenen, Lernen, get a job to get 9 to 5, get paid, pay rent, and was darf ich es? And living bedachkus was very accepted in the Lubavitcher Chassidische Welt. But I think, first of all, people, that's why they're putting it in their profile. They want someone who, I don't want to say values money, that money is a priority in life, but values that it's important to have the drive to go get a job and pay the bills and not to have to be bedachkos and have to count the pennies. Besides the point that we see that Rabbi's shitta since, Bechlal, and especially the late man's early nuns and the brachas after the old Hamas that came onto Lubavitch with Ashiris Muflaga is unbelievable. And the Rebbe says many times in the Sichas, even in the last Sichas,
Truman und Beis.
And therefore it's Nishkan Aveda. But it's not that you worship money and you worship luxury and pasmakin and with all luxuries, but it means that it's a priority to have enough biful medarf and not to have to struggle. So it's more about the mastama. What they mean is not that a person has to have financial stability before they get married, but has the wherewithal and drive that he's going to make sure that there's going to be, and it's not going to be a schlepper, and that the wife is going to have to go work full time and not have time to be home with the kids because he can't get his act together. Next question.
But in all fairness, I know it's not our topic tonight. I just want to make maybe just a little hoisafa that in that Sikha, Truman and Beis, the Rebbe did say something very, very unique, and that is that a Jew is connected to Zohav, gold, and that a Jew should be zech mishtadel to have a shidduch kipshuta. That Jews should try to be materially wealthy. And the Rebbe said with that wealth, they'll be able to do amazing, incredible things, including use the wealth because to build the third Beis HaMikdash with gold. Generally, as you know, the Rebbe, especially in the later years, he wanted everybody to develop big hasagas, harchava, to think big, to build and expand, and change the world. That everyone wanted, everybody should change the world. Everybody should maximize themselves. So it's important to be able to think very, very big, but it should not come from a place of insecurity. It should come from a place of empowerment. It should come from a place of, this is what Hashem wants for me, to be able to utilize my kishreines, and I'm going to allow myself to be a channel, but not to allow the materialism to take over my life and destroy my priorities. Because ultimately, what you want most in a family is you want menuchas hanefesh, you want serenity, you want trust, you want a relationship. And yes, we need money. We want our chava, we want to have dira norma chiva daita shaladim, you want a nice home, you want to be able to have clothes, you want to be able to give your children what they need. But what you really want is it should all be part of the relationship. It should be part of the connection with yourself, with the other person, and with Hashem.
Good. The next question is a little bit longer. If you want to read it, Devaila.
On the concept of Ezer Kenegde, the idea is that the only way that I will experience dissonance in the relationship is if I'm doing something wrong. Is that not a dangerous idea? If a person takes this too seriously, they can develop a serious self-loathing and not be able to defend themselves in an abusive relationship because they say, oh, my wife has to disagree with me. Ezer Kenegde. I know it's weird to talk this way as a guy, as a bochur, but coming from a home where my father was always treated as an inferior shmata, even in front of the kids, I am afraid that my wife is going to abuse me and I'm going to have to be quiet because Ezer Kenegde. That's a good question. Mendel, de wilst entferen or de wilst ik zal entferen?
Entfer, but bekitzer.
Okay, so very, very bekitzer. Chas v'shalom to think that Ezer Kenegde means that it's a mitzvah to take abuse and and that you should become an inferior creature. I'm laughing from sadness that you should feel that you need to become an inferior creature in the house and your spouse can take advantage from you, whether it's the husband or the wife. Esele Ezer Kenegde means something completely different. The way the Alter Rebbe explains it in Torah Parshas Bereshis, and also there's a beautiful commentary of the Nitziv and Hamek Davar on it in Chumash. It's the idea, the exact opposite idea. And that is when people respect each other, so then our differences of opinions don't become reasons to denigrate somebody. They become reasons and sources to appreciate each other more, to expand our horizons. The best example for this is the whole Shas, Mishnayos and Gemara. The Mishnah says in Yevamos that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel didn't stop arguing, but they never stopped respecting each other and loving each other. Ha'emes v'ashalom ha'hevu. Beis Hillel would actually give preference to the words of Beis Shammai, and that's why in the whole Mishnah, which was edited by Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who was a grandson of Hillel, he always first says Divrei Beis Shammai and then Divrei Beis Hillel. Why? Why are you giving the opinion, stating the opinion of your opponent first? The answer is because another opinion is not seen as something that's going to crush me and denigrate me. It's really an opportunity to learn about the other person, to connect to you, to expand my horizons. That's what Ezer Kenegde means. If chas v'shalom is being used, that the husband and the wife become a shmata and your opinion is insignificant and you're always wrong, that's not a relationship that can flourish. And it's very important to be able to see what type of person it is. If it's a person who cannot respect another opinion, it's a person who cannot make space for your emotions. Remember, in marriage, there's no such a thing as objective truth. In marriage, there's something called subjective truth. I see life certain ways, you see life certain ways. We're not going to both be able to see everything in the same way. That's fine. We just have to be able to listen to the other person's view and respect it, make space for it, be empathetic towards it, learn from it, grow from it, be humble about it. And sometimes it's okay to disagree as long as the disagreement doesn't become a source of mistrust and conflict.
Good. What are some good questions to ask while dating to really get to know someone? So I want to say, first of all, I'm not so sure that by asking questions you can get to know someone, period at all. But part of dating is to see if there's compatibility and to see if there's a match. And getting to know someone is just by being present, relaxed, and spending time and talking to each other. Like you said before, Rabbi Jacobson, how much are you going to get to know the person during dating? But let's talk about dating for a minute. It's of course, common sense maybe is not that common anymore, but pay attention as Bochurim, we're in Yeshiva, and then relationships and manners, and that Acheretz V'nimus is not on the high priority list. Maybe it should be. So when we're talking about dating, spending time with someone, be careful, be sensitive, and that's perhaps how you can show yourself who you are, and you can see the other person for what they are. There's there's an attitude to how should I be on a date? Should I be myself? Well, in yeshiva, I sit like this, and that's how I do. So maybe on the date, I should just because that's how I am, and that's how I'm going to be on my couch. So maybe on the date, I should just be myself with all my glory. And of course, that's an extreme mishugas. On the other hand, you don't want to put up an act, a complete act. You have to be an actual self because that's how you're going to see if you can handle each other. But if I may, for 2 minutes, address some menschlichkeit issues when it comes to a date. Notify the shadchan beforehand what type of place you're going to go to, because if it's going to be cold or not, indoor, outdoor, so the woman can dress appropriately. It's very important for women to be able to dress accordingly to where they need to be. Although to you, it may be just be a one-piece suit. Yes, sweater, no sweater, coat on, coat off, but that's not fair. Be very sensitive with time and understand you should be on time, very important. And if not, make sure that if something happens, make sure that there's a good reason and let them know beforehand. Understand that for women, there's always last-minute delays. Know that, right? As the saying goes, when your wife says, I'm going to be ready in 5 minutes, you can start learning Rambam, and perhaps you'll be finished 3 prakim, because that's sometimes 5 minutes, takes 15 minutes. So give the 2-minute break. Or if there's some people, the shadchan instructs to text the woman, I'm here, or text to the shadchan, whatever it is, I'm here, take your time. That's giving a little bit of sensitivity that they shouldn't feel, oh, I'm here, oh, I better go, and create stress. Lachatz. I'm here, take your time. It's a sensitive thing. What about opening the door of the car? If you're going in a car, opening the door for the woman. So some people go, that's too much. It is menschlich, it's a menschlich thing. Hold the door open. If you're in the car, open the door from the inside. Want to go around from the outside and make a whole, formal opening the door. But that's a nice thing to do. It's a gesture, especially when you're walking in the date into a building, out of a building, hold the door open. I know many bachim are inclined to let ladies first. You open the door, she should go in first. And I've heard it on a Zoom from, I think, Mrs. Alevsky in Cleveland, that she brought her chassan, I believe. Maybe they were newlyweds or a chassan to visit the Rebbe Tzimchana in 1418. And he so kindly opened up the door of the apartment and let her go in first. And the Rebbe Tzimchana commented to him, by uns führt man sich als der Mann geht da rein früher. So no, there's a Lubavitcher etiquette that the man enters first, even though you want to be so super kind. So holding the door doesn't mean you don't have to enter first. Just an idea to bring. It's there is a concept of Hasidic etiquette.
The Mendel, the Maisa with the Rebbe Rashab.
Zog.
It's in the Sichos. He was once in Germany with Rebbetzin Steiner Sada, and he went in to a sophisticated German rabbi, and the Rebbe Rashab went in first. So this rabbi looked at him and says, "Wo ist Damenrecht?" which in German is, what happened to women's rights? Wo ist Damenrecht? Like, how could you behave this way? And the Friedrich Rebbe writes, "V'zolgu ein of d'moyes." The Rebbe Rashab, tears came down from his eyes. He felt, whatever, you can explain it as you wish, but that's just an interesting story. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, very good. Thank you for bringing it in.
Damenrecht. Who is Damenrecht?
Another thing, very important on dates, show sensitivity to time. Sometimes just in the beginning of the date, you can say, I know you have work tomorrow. Is there a time when you would like to be back? Like a heads up. It's such a relaxer in the beginning. And yes, I'm the woman, speak up. And you have to say, the truth is, I would like to be back by 11 o'clock. But you never know, if it goes well, we can, But at least there's so many things. Today's day and age, people struggle with stress and anxiety and worry and insecurity. So the more relaxed it can be, instead of being a l'shem yichud and a whole shear or a project, you can just be relaxed and be natural by preempting and getting rid of the stressors. maybe she's getting tired, but she'll be uncomfortable to say, I think we should go back. When it's stretching a little, you can say, would you like to go now or stay a little bit longer? Would you like to go back home, or please let me know? That's just, I know it kind of sounds common sense, but sometimes we don't chapsa because, it's going good. Yeah, she'll say if she'll want to go back, why not? She's an adult. Lav dafka. She doesn't want to disappoint you, so you're the man, take the lead and be proactive in these things, and you see the responses. You'll get to know people. And b'chlal, it's a good idea for Bachrim when you're getting ready to go on dates, as we call it today. Talk to your mother, talk to your sister. If you don't have experience, it's a good idea to talk to some ladies to get some advice. What I wanted to say about this question: what are good questions to ask to get to know someone? B'chlal, dates, I know the formal dates are like question. It starts feeling like an interview. It's better if you can have the conversation flow instead of asking questions. One topic to let the topics flow. So it becomes just talking, and that's how you can sense, am I pay attention? Am I comfortable? Am I relaxed with this person? Is this person making me stressed or this? And you can say, instead of asking, you can get into any conversation without the question. Tell me about your work. Tell me more. Let's talk about your family. Oh, look at the beautiful scenery out there. I love this place. Or things like that. You can just bring the conversation flow versus question answer that becomes silent time and nervous. Am I asking the right questions? Am I not asking the right questions? It's easier if there's no questions and you can get the conversation going. I know it doesn't always work, but it's just an idea. People today come from Shadchanim and they have a game and they come with a list. We have an official game we're going to play. And it's, for some people it works because they have a hard time conversing. But for some people it's not needed if you can get the conversation flowing. It's plus a general idea that I'm not going to fight with the Shadchanim. Let the Shadchanim talk to Rabbanim and about this, but people are into doing activities together. We're going to go bowling, we're going to go to a game, we're going to go to a restaurant to eat. So number one, the biggest distraction to a good conversation is eating at a restaurant. Just think about that. Bowling, it's an activity. It's a distraction in just sitting together, talking in a relaxed way to see how you are with the other person. So sometimes it's needed, but that's I don't want to say b'diavad. That's when there's an exception already. But l'chatchila, to go plan activities, is l'chayra taking away from the precious time where you're just supposed to be there with the other person to see. This is just my opinion. I think it has to be thought about a little bit. Okay. Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, anything or the next question?
Somebody asks Reb Mendel, he went out with a girl and they had a mutual understanding that they liked each other as friends, but they didn't feel that it's marriage material. They went out again, but there was still no intense feelings. And they felt that it probably won't end up in marriage, but they still would like to go out again because they appreciated each other as friends. So he's asking, after how long of not developing a more intimate feeling than friendship, does it make sense to stop going out and say, okay, it's not going to work? What would you answer? In other words, obviously, sometimes after 1, 2, 3 times, it's not going to work. But he says they're enjoying each other as friends, just as more cerebral friends, I would say, platonic friends, they call it. But so he would like to, and she would like to, but he feels that it's not going to that place of marriage. So is it worth it to continue? Is it not worth it to continue?
We're not into, in our lifestyle as Fromme Yidden, Hasidim, we're not into spending time with females just to be friendly. If there's a potential to get married, metotis. If there's no potential to get married, get advice. I mean, I know the numbers have gone up tremendously. 5 dates, 10 dates, 15, 20, 25 is today kind of still okay. You have to really ask a friend, a coach, a shadchan, a rav. If you're just not wasting the other person's time, you're not wasting her time or she's not wasting your time because life is, But if there's advancement and there's things going on, so you have to say you have to try. The only reason to try again is get it off a friendship and into more intimate, because sometimes it doesn't move because nobody is willing to be vulnerable. So you try, be a little more vulnerable, talk more about something which may be uncomfortable to talk about. And she can try that. And if it doesn't go and you're sure 2-3 times that this is just going to be friendship, so it's not fear. It's passion, not fear. And even if both agree, what do you mean? I'm not in a rush to get married. We'll go on another 5 dates. It'll help me with the dating experience. This is nicht ausgehalten.
Right.
Let's move on to the question and answers. What are some ways to accurately access or assess?
Assess.
I think you're trying to say assess mental health during dating process.
Oh, that's an important question. So there's things that you're...
I think you should address also, not only how can you assess, but what if you are struggling with some mental emotional health issue? At what point, if at all, does it need to be shared?
Right. So these are very, very sensitive and very, very serious questions. In terms of you assessing the other person's mental health, it's critical because if you have doubts about it and you have questions and there are red flags, you really want to investigate it more. Because it may be, by the way, that a person struggling with mental health and dealing with it is an incredible human being. I just want to say this for the record. Some people, and I know this, from hundreds and hundreds of people that I have very close relationships with in person and through correspondence, people who struggle with mental health challenges, but they take responsibility and they take accountability for it and they work on it. They are some of the most incredible people in the world in terms of depth, in terms of emes, in terms of pnimius, in terms of avoida, in terms of bittul, because they fight for their lives. Dr. Tversky, somebody once asked Dr. Tversky, alav shalom, he always spoke about recovery. The guy said, do you really look up to addicts in recovery as much as you say you talk about them in your lectures? He says, you want to know? My lawyer is an addict in recovery. My accountant is an addict in recovery. My cardiologist is an addict in recovery. My barber is an addict in recovery. He says, those are the only ones I really trust because they work on themselves. So it's important to emphasize that. But here's the key. But you have to know. You have to know who you're dealing with. You may have a struggle, and the fact that the other person has their own struggle, and you can both be honest, may be an unbelievable bond. But it's important to know who the other person is. You have to take the time. Maybe you have to do some searching. You have to do some investigation. Remember, some people who are dealing with serious conditions may cover it up by dating. And chas v'shalom, you don't want it to come out later, and then you're left in a situation that that's very, very difficult. Another important thing, when things come up, you have to deal with it in the beginning. Some people, they see things in their spouse and they wait 20 years till it gets out of order. And then you have not only the original problem, you have 20 years of compounded problem with all the interest. So it's important to deal with things after you're married in the beginning. But I want to say generally, so it's important to assess it. It's important to ask. It's important to do investigation. You may need help from some people. You want to know about the person's midas. You want to know about the person's attitudes. It's also a chiyuv. If I'm dealing with something, at some point during the dates, it's important to share. Now, I don't think it should be the first or the second or even the third date. There's a big paisik in Reb David Cohen. He's from the big paiskim in New York, Rav of Gvul Yavitz, Mechabes Svarim. So I heard from him that he said that, maybe the fourth date, la'erech, when there's already much more, and we're talking about if there's understanding and you want to continue, the fourth or afterwards at some point to share with the person that there's a struggle. Because if you share it before the first date, they won't want to go out with you. If you share it after the 20th date, it may be unfair to them. But at some point where they can appreciate your value and your humanness and your milas and then put it in context, it's important to share. Now, it's only important to share things that, this I heard from some big therapists and poskim who dealt with it, that are going to affect the marriage. If you had an experience once and you really dealt with it, I'm not talking if you didn't deal with it, You know, and God knows, so be honest. But if you really, really dealt with it, it's not always a chiyuv to bring it into the dating. Not everything that you have to bring into the dating if it's not going to affect the marriage. But if it's going to define the marriage and the other person needs to know who you are, you may be an unbelievable person because of it, but I have to be able to share it. There are maybe some unique situations where you know it's really not going to affect the marriage. Okay, still get advice from somebody who cares, because you don't want to do gnevas das. You did not to deceive another person, and then afterwards it becomes so much harder. Is really, really inappropriate. And I just want to say one more thing, and Mendel, you'll tell me if you agree. The myth of perfect families is gone. The only families that I know that are perfect are the families I don't know. Maybe there are some perfect families, 2.5 of them, and they live in countries or continents that I'm not aware of. We are all suffering, trust me, in every single family. I know no family. There's mental illness, there's depression, there's trauma, there's anxiety, there's wounds. And you know what? We always talk about this. It's not even things necessarily from our generation. We know today scientifically we carry in our genes 3,000 years of Jewish history. L'toiv u'lemutav. We carry all the emunah, all the mesiras nefesh, all the betochen, all the resilience, all the yiras shamayim, all the midas tovas. And we also carry other things. And it's coming out in our day. So all of us have to be humble and realize you don't want to marry a perfect person. You want to marry an accountable person. We don't need to, we need accountability. And that way, we need to become less judgmental and stigmatize people less. But we need to always remember that to do this, we all have to become part of a conversation that is much more authentic and much, much more honest, where we can appreciate that we don't put people into boxes. And we understand that people go through journeys. And the critical point is, am I taking responsibility for my challenge and dealing with it? Do I have the tools and resources or not? Those are some very brief pointers that I would say. Mendel, perhaps you want to add, because this is a very sensitive issue.
No, good. No, for some people who are faster daters and finish a shidduch in 5 dates, there are still some like that, then most probably date 3 is already a very serious date, and it could be a time to bring it up. Just that was my only comment. Otherwise, it's true. By the way, the same thing is with regular health issue. Even a health issue that's not an emotional or mental issue, physical health. Also, if it's going to affect the marriage, then when it gets serious, it's time to bring it up.
Mendel, somebody says, can you address forming an emotionally romantic connection where you really become deeply emotionally connected while balancing tznius during dating?
So that's a very good question, because we're from Eden and there's no negia and there's no flirting and the simple language and there's no overly romance, and it has to be gentle and menschlich and caring. So that you got to do. I mean, although we know when you're married, women love compliments on their shoes, on their clothing, on their makeup, on their glasses. But the question is, can a bacher compliment a woman on a date, on her dress? This is because it's a very kind midah to do. In general, the first response would be that this probably is inappropriate. But that's just one example. But mostly is, don't try to impress. Present yourself as you are, to be honest, and the other person will decide if they like it or not. One thing you can do on the 3rd date, let's say, the 2nd, you can send a message to the shadchan that either or there are 3 ideas, or you can get into the car and you can say, I have 3 choices where to go now. A, B, or C. Why don't you make the choice? Tell her. It's a good feeling. Wow, you gave her the choice. Address comfort level in the car. Is the temperature good? Is the air conditioner too high, too low? That creates you're in a gentle way hitting emotions. You sit down, you come to the hotel, the guy, you sit the cow, okay, you sit down. Why don't you check in with her? Is it okay to sit here? Would you like to sit in another corner? This is things that women are sensitive to. And it's important. You don't want to put her immediately into stress, because if a woman is sitting in an uncomfortable seat because she thinks other people are looking at her or something, the whole mood is already changed. And you don't understand what happened to the date. Why is she in such a... Well, you could have asked and said, "Is this comfortable, or not?" Which is beautiful. That's kind of way. And again, you have to be a leader, lead the conversation. Don't say, "Oh, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you." Some people are so caring that they become like overbearing, caring. Are you okay? Like a puppy. Like you become like a mother. You're a man. You're an elegant, caring person. Don't overbear.
Be a puppy, but you don't have to be a German Shepherd. You don't have to be a Sher Shenogach Esapora. Can sein a Sher Tam.
Correct. You want to help. Yeah, back to the emotional issue. You want to help the woman be less nervous.
Before I went on a date, my older sister told me, she says, remember, the responsibility of starting a conversation is on the man. Kol kvuda bas melech pnima. She said, sometimes the girl you're dating, it was a very refined woman, the woman I married. She said, she's not going to want to start the conversation. So there's going to be an awkward silence. You have to start the conversation.
Very good.
Probably with some girls, it's not that way, but it's important. In other words, you have to be the mashpia in the sense a woman wants to be able to see your leadership, your attentiveness, your confidence, your strength, your ability to be there, to be present, to take responsibility, to take initiative, right? And like Chassidus says, what's mashpia makabel? Mashpia makabel. What's mashpia makabel? It's not a regular makabel, right? Chassidus that the chosin is a mashpia and the kala is a makabel. So yeah, yana makabel, right? It says in Chassidus, the Maimonim of the chasanas, Drushi chasana, the man, the zocher, gives the tippa, the seed of life to the nekeva. She doesn't only receive it. After 9 months, she gives you a living child. So she takes what you get, she takes what you give, and she completely transforms it. So anayim etzias, from a tippa, it becomes a living child. The earth takes a drop of rain, right? It's also the tippa, it's brought in the Ger HaKodesh. And what does the earth gives you back? It gives you back vegetables and legumes and fruits and grain. Panim chadashas ba'olaka. So you be mashpia, and don't worry, she'll take what you take, she'll take what you give, and she'll see what shemachem from them shena mesek.
Exactly. You'll talk for 1 minute, she'll talk for 9-10 minutes, no problem. But I wanted to say also, you're talking about kind of emotional. If you see she's nervous or you're nervous, clean the air. Say, I can tell you're nervous, or I'm also nervous. We're nervous together here. You just put it there.
It's always good to acknowledge awkwardness, to say we're awkward, we're human, we're awkward.
There you go. I'm feeling so nervous sitting with Rabbi Jacobson for the first time on a public Zoom with a world-class speaker, and ich bin Magid in Shermanox. So I'm very happy when you talk more and I talk less.
Nishke Magid in Shermanox. Rav Rashi for Sherman Oaks, but okay.
Assistant Rabbi. Gotta give credit.
Assistant Rav Rashi. The bottom line is when we acknowledge our awkwardness, it's geschmack. And you know what? It's the beauty of an Erlich Chayid that there is a natural busha by Shonim, Rachmanim, Gam Lechasadim, that we are shy. It's good. It's not a bad thing. It's when there's no boundaries, nobody's shy, When already at the age 13, you know everything. And there's no shyness, but the fact that there's shyness, it means that there's an electricity. There's chashmal, there's something happening, there's something, it's intense, it's serious. It's a serious energy. So it's good that there's a little awkwardness. It means you're both human, you're both sensitive, you both are aware that something deep is happening. There's a great potential for great things to happen,
Right.
So,
back to showing care. Showing care could mean, maybe I was asked this question. I'm not 100% sure. If you're a seasoned rabbi, you're showing care. Someone wants to stop to go to the bathroom, she can give you. You can offer to hold her coat if she's holding the thing. It's not usher to hand each other things or to hold something for each other. That's a way to show care. It's just a technicality. Women that are not just out of seminary and they're already a little bit older, I don't think appreciate which camp did you go to and what job did you do, a learning teacher, and how do you do. You know what I mean? Just out of seminary, the people are still excited to share their high school years. But if someone is a little bit older, it may come across a little nerdy. So just
when I was dating with my wife, so on the third date it was a little quiet. I know people are surprised that I was quiet. Well, man, I shut my mouth, especially in the presence of people who are smarter than me. So it was quiet. So I tell it was then the young woman I was dating. I say, that somebody told me a joke. That this guy, Bochur, came to the Rosh Yeshiva and he said, I never spoke to a girl. What do you do by the dates? So the Rosh Yeshiva said, the first date, you talk about food. You talk about family. The second date, you talk about food. And the third date, you talk about philosophy. So he goes on the first date. For 2 hours, he's quiet because he never spoke to a girl. After 2 hours, he says, do you have a brother? She says, no. Okay, the date is over. The second date, he's quiet for 2 hours. And then he says, do you like spaghetti? She says no. The date is over. He spoke about food. The third date is philosophy. So he turns to her after 2 hours. He says, if you would have had a brother, do you think he would have liked spaghetti? So this is what I tell the girl I was dating. So she responds to me. I remember we were walking in Manhattan and she says, you missed the end of the story. I said, what's the end of the story? She said, the end of the story is they got engaged. And she got engaged to me also. I got engaged to her. When I was a Bochur, you may remember, there was a story that was circulating about a very, very Chassidish Bochur, who of course never spoke to, the other gender outside of family. And he went on a date. And it was too awkward for him. So he wasn't talking. And she tried, was machst du? How are you? Where were you for the summer? Were you going for the summer? What are your hobbies? You want to go on? Nothing. Eretnisht. He was like shell-shocked. So finally, she turns to him and she says, Efshe willst du ibe sagen a Wort, was der Rebbe hat gesagt beim Verbringen. Maybe say something that the Rebbe said at the Verbringen. And he looks at her and he says, the gehst doch hereinschleppen dem Rebbe in there?
True story.
Huh?
It's a true story.
Yeah, and they got engaged. Like my wife said, you're going to schlep the Rebbe into it. So
while we have
a woman once told me she married one of the older Chabad Chassidim, and this is in the 50s. They went on shlichus, been on shlichus for 6 decades. And he was very uncomfortable on the dates. They went on a train, they went on a subway. So she points to, she told it to me. She's already on the Olam Emes. She says, I told him, Hechshe mitzvah is echa mitzvah. Hechshe mitzvah is also a mitzvah. Don't get so on his boat. My sister told me, this is back in 79, that my brother-in-law took her on the first date to Kennedy Airport. They walked around, imagine going on a date, they walked around Kennedy Airport in 1979, and she told me she made a vow in her heart, I guess a bli neder vow, that if he ever does this again, she will not look at him. She says, now we're married with 11 children later. Bli ayin hara. The bottom line is, we're saying all these cute anecdotes because this is all part of the plan. And just sometimes it's difficult, especially when it ends and you have to start all over again. But don't allow it to deter you, because kachi darke shaloilam. This is all part of our journey. And each date that doesn't work out, every no is one step closer to yes. There's a great fundraiser in Lubavitch. He's one of the best fundraisers. And he once said that he doesn't mind hearing no. You know why? Because 1 in 20 people says yes, and 19 say no. So every no is closer to the one who's going to say yes. Spiritually also, it's that way. Whenever you hear a no, it's doing something for you. It's making you grow. It's making you become aware. Don't see it as an invitation for yiyush, chas v'shalom, and desperation. Like I heard from the Rebbe once, yiyush is shaloi midas. When there's yiyush, there's no das. If there's das, there's no yiyush. Every nisayon in life, every disappointment in life is there to create das, to create more depth, more authenticity, more perception, more awareness. It brings you closer to the person you're supposed to become in this world. So it's an incredible opportunity. It may be difficult. Menasa Hashem Elokeichem. Menasa is on the sign, and also it lifts you up. You know, when you're stretching, in exercise, stretching is painful. But you stretch, you become bigger, stronger, larger, more fluid, you know, more flexible. Your body, your rhythm flows in a more seamless fashion. The same is true emotionally, psychologically. Somebody asks a question here. Should I go on a date with a checklist? She's this, she's not this. So it's a good question, but generally speaking, I would say that's not the point. Yes, you want to figure out a lot of things in a date. The point is to try to experience the other person. A date is not a time to analyze. You know what you really want to try to have? You want to try to have a good time, a meaningful, good, exciting, enjoyable experience, and allow that to happen. If you're so tense, okay, that's also normal. You're human. But it's not really about analyzing the other person, because marriage is not about analysis. Marriage is not about living in the head. It's not a computer relationship. Marriage is about the ability to experience another person, that the energies connect. That's why the Rebbe told Rebbe Leib Groner, Ich kann dir nicht helfen. Not because I don't want to help you, because it's neshama to neshama. So you want to just really be able to try to be there with the other person, experience the other person, empathize with the other person, not be rigid, and be curious, be inquisitive. You know, don't put the person into a trap. Be open, listen, be curious, be inquisitive. And also, and if something is triggering you very badly at a date, like you're like, be curious, because that's good. That's good. The Rebbe used to say, it's an unbelievable word. You remember the Sikha? Maybe you were there. It was Va'eda, I think, Mamalef or Membeis, the difference of Parei and Sanchedev. That the person that denies God completely and is apathetic is much worse than the person who's angry at Hashem. The Rebbe said then, "Val elakus tamon." If you're getting angry, it's like the difference of a shor shenagach mit an eis. Sometimes a person just doesn't care. I don't even get angry at you. If something is triggering you, it means something hit the spot. So it's a good opportunity. You know, on dating, like, you know, what just happened? Did this girl remind you of somebody in your house? Did she remind you of your mother, of your father, maybe of yourself? Did she remind you of something that happened? It's good. It's good to be aware. Huh?
Yeah. Looks good.
It's,
to make another finish your point.
Yeah. Somebody asks a question I would like you to address. How should Bali Tshuva? Some of us are Bali Tshuva, Chabad Bali Tshuva, or other Bali Tshuva. How do we work past the rigid black and white thinking that many of us developed in order to become frum? We left our parents, we left our environments, we left our schools, and we had to learn. This is what God wants, this is what he doesn't want, this is X, this is Y, this is no, this is yes. And sometimes we get caught up in this. And how can we emancipate ourselves from this? Because we don't have that natural, organic support system growing up in religious homes. That's a good question.
Yes, it is. I believe it's one of the reasons we see by the Rebbe. The Rebbe was not pro the Bali Tshuva dropping their previous life completely.
Yeah, never.
Like the guy put away his guitar and he didn't use it for 10 years.
Yeah.
The Rebbe was not for that. Go back to finish your degree, use your talents that you have from Hashem, that you already used, use it for Avodas Hashem. And that's most probably in the same thing. Yes, maybe you had to take a little break or develop black and white, but now say 1 second. My social skills didn't have to go dark. Fakert. You should be able to bring it in. I don't have any specific advice, but perhaps people that are specific mashpim in Bali Tshuva Yeshiva can address that. That medarf sein normal. Don't lose that.
You say that in English? Could you say that in English?
You got to be normal. Don't lose that quality. You got to come with a clean car, even if you're black and white. The Eibishter wants you to come on a date with a clean car. You want to impress? Women notice all the details by nature. Most women, they notice detail. They pay attention to details. Make sure.
You also have to become aware of something. And I'm saying this to all of us, Bali Tshuva and not Bali Tshuva. Sometimes our religious commitment is fraught and saturated with inner anxiety. In other words, my obsession with halacha and Yerushalayim doesn't have to do with a loving relationship with Hashem. It has to do with the fact that I hate myself, I hate people, I hate life, I'm stressed out, I'm always overwhelmed. And sometimes I suffer from various anguishes, and halacha becomes the outlet, and Musar becomes the outlet. And it's very, very important because such a Judaism can be very, very toxic. As the Gemara says in Tainus, in Yuma, loy zocha, loy nasis, loy sam hamavis, the holiest thing, chas v'shalom, could become poison because it feeds something that's very difficult inside of me. So it's very important to be aware of this. Somebody asks a question here. He says, I am a very anxious person. I suffer from a lot of anxiety. I don't know how to let go. I am always self-conscious. I'm always thinking about what other people think about me. When I do it on dates also, what am I supposed to do? The Mendel. A Bochur says he's full of anxiety. First of all, welcome to the club. You're not. The Rebbe said about the pinya carve, the ben yachid from Tam Chetmimim. The Rebbe once came in Friday morning to Yeshiva, and the boys were up a whole night, so there was only the pinya learning, right? So that's what they used to say when I was a Bochur. So the ben yachid from Tam Chetmimim. Tam Chetmimim has only one child.
Yeah. But there's nothing wrong, by the way, like middle-aged shluchim need to start doing exercise because otherwise you can get sick and crazy. If you feel anxiety, learn some relaxation skills, like natural ones, not yoga with meditations, but simple things. Talk to people that teach sports. Talk to people that speak speakers. There's books out there, little, not books, things. There's breathing exercises, body position exercises. Spend 5 minutes and think, what am I grateful for right now from the Eibishter? If there is something that you feel that's not controllable, first of all, bring it up on the date. If you're going already, say, I feel anxious a lot. Do you notice that I'm angry? That I'm anxious? And maybe you're over killing it. Maybe you're not such a terrible anxiety. You're just angry that you're too anxious. That could also be. But bottom line, there's nothing wrong to ask for help.
There's also many levels of anxiety. In other words, there's anxiety that may be real, but it can be dealt with in pretty simple ways. Maybe some exercise every day for an hour or a half an hour, some intense exercise can really, really be helpful for you. The way you eat. Sometimes maybe the anxiety is deeper and you may need more sophisticated help. Maybe there's something stuck inside your system, and that's fine. Open yourself up. There's good people out there, and there's a lot of healing available today. So many different ways. So really don't be vulnerable. Be vulnerable, and you want to talk to people who are experts in this field. Okay, somebody asks a question, Reb Mendel. I want to go on another date. I liked it. The girl says, no, nothing is happening. She doesn't want to continue, but I really want to continue. What am I supposed to do? Do I just say, forget it? Or do I try to convince her? It's a practical question. I would say very practical. If you could convince her, of course, convince her. If this is something you feel there's great potential there, of course, do whatever you got to do. Maybe tell her, give, let's try once more. If you feel, of course, if she says no, she says no. That's her. You have to respect boundaries. You do what you got to do, and she'll do what she got to do. And if you have that ability to convince, maybe you could send a note or send something that will stimulate her in an interesting way. Adar. Somebody says, I want to cut off the dating. Can I do it by text? What do you say? If you went out once or twice, maybe 3 times, you could tell the shadchan. But if you went out a lot of times, I don't think it's respectful. I don't think it's respectful. If you went out 6, 7, 8, especially 9, 10 times, and you put in so many hours and she put in so many hours, I don't think it's respectful to send a text or a WhatsApp and say it's not going to work out. I feel, maybe unless it was a whole time in a very distanced way. But if you really got closer and she thought there's a lot of potential here, and if you, for whatever reason, feel it's not appropriate, I think she and you deserve maybe a short conversation, but
yes,
the way you took it in, you agree?
Absolutely agree. Yeah,
it's called respect.
Think what's the best respectful, sensitive
respectful,
way
yeah.
that long term the other person.
Yeah, remember she spent 2 months with you, and she gave up nights, and you gave up nights. I can't just send a text. It's over. It's not covered habrius. Even a regular person, kol shekin, a person who you and she invested so much time in. It's panim b'panim. You sit down, you go out, maybe for half an hour, and you just say, in a very sensitive way.
I want to adjust. Yeah, I thought you finished. Sorry, you didn't.
Yeah, no, just in a very sensitive way to be able to say, I really feel that this is not going to work in terms of marriage. And I just want to tell you something. A boy turned to me and he says, I can't stop the dating because I have rachmanis on her. She loves me and she's going to cry for 6 months. So I told him, I see somebody asked a question here too. I told him, maybe you have something to add. I said, you think this is called rachmanis? You think rachmanis for her is that she should marry somebody who's marrying her because she's a rachmanis case? That's called love. Don't you think she deserves a guy who's crazy about her? Don't you think she deserves a guy who thinks she's the greatest woman in the world? You're not having rachmanis on her by turning her into a rachmanis case. The fact that you're not my shidduch doesn't mean you're a bad person. The fact that I'm not your shidduch doesn't mean you're a bad person. A toaster oven is a wonderful thing. We use it in our house. But you don't use a toaster oven, to make chicken soup. Not because it's bad, because it's a toaster oven. It's not made for chicken soup. Lahavdil, forgive my stupid mashal. Every person has his or her shlichus, and it's not a bad thing. So we have to remember that. So yes, it may be painful and disappointing, but do it with sensitivity, do it with respect. I want to hear what you have to say. Also, somebody asked a question: if she ends it or I end it, does the other person deserve to hear the real reasons why we ended it? Why ended it?
That's a very good question. Even if it's not going to continue, it's always good to stress the other person's milus. Make her feel good about herself. Say, I enjoyed speaking to you. You have excellent qualities. By the way, even if you are continuing, it's good to give feedback. Someone says something about themselves, say, I appreciate that quality. It's very important to me, or I enjoyed the speaking to you, or whatever it is. And even if you end it, you can also tell them that they're a special person, and I'm sure whoever they'll find and marry them will be, they'll be very lucky to have them, or whatever it is. That's just a respectful way. But you definitely have to be careful to. If you're going to end it in a very respectful way. Does the person have to know the real reason? It depends. If you can say it in a respectful way, and the other person can learn something from it, and you feel they're kalim for it, then yes. If not, the other person maybe can deserve it in an indirect way. A family member, a friend, why you felt it wasn't. Because otherwise you may leave a person in doubt, and that's not good today, self-doubt about themselves. And you might think the person will be feeling down, that, I didn't, he thinks bad about me, I'm not good looking. Or why should he make a person go away with such fakeness? You have to eitzazach with a good shadchan to figure out what's the best way to give the message. Absolutely. I want to just one more detail.
I would just say, can I just add something to that?
Yes.
If you respect the other person and you spend a lot of time with them, I'm thinking about myself. I would appreciate to work on myself. If you know that this is a girl or this is a boy who really wants to work on themselves, it's not a bad thing to tell somebody or give a message in a very kind and respectful way. that maybe I could learn from it. Again, I'm not talking about chas v'shalom to embarrass or humiliate or demonize, but either directly or indirectly, if it's done in a right way, it's an opportunity for growth. And I think when we hear something about ourselves that can help us grow, it's a gift. So don't run away from it necessarily.
Oh, and that way for sure. If she said no, beg for the reason. Ask for the feedback. You'll grow from it. The more you'll get, the more you learn about yourself. I was saying the other way around. If you are ending it, is it fair to tell her the full truth?
Right.
Be very careful. Do it in the most sensitive way.
Absolutely. Always in a sensitive, respectful way. But if you can, it's good. Don't treat somebody like as though they're a child that can't hear anything. If you're talking about a mature person, we grow. We don't grow from compliments. We grow from people who challenge us, people who stimulate us. People who point out things to us that we're uncomfortable with. Being in my comfort zone is not going to help me. Yes, it's nice, but it's not going to help me.
I forgot who's the marker for this word. A good friend accepts you the way you are. A great friend tries to make you better.
You wanted to add one more detail.
No, I wanted to add about people asked before, and it addresses to a question: how can I find out so much about a person when we have so few dates? We don't date for 6 months or a year. It's not so acceptable. So how can I get all the qualities of a person that you mentioned in such a short time? You have to think about what to talk about. Talk about family. Talk about their relationships with their parents. It's a little vulnerable, but if you're comfortable to get there, second, third, fourth, who they look up to, who are their friends, what they like in their friends, which rabbis or teachers they respect, what's their relationship, who are they closer to, who do they like spending time more with of their siblings, and why. These are conversations where you can get a taste of what the person appreciates and what they're like and what they like doing. And if they're shallow or deeper, someone asked the question, do we both have to be on the same intelligence level? No, it doesn't have to be that. I mean, it can't be completely because, then if you feel like you're not living in the shtetl where you're out all day from morning to night, from Sunday to Shabbos, making a living and only together Shabbos, you're spending time together. So there got to be some type of, compatibility. But if you're a brilliant guy, you don't have to marry a brilliant genius. Lav dafka.
Listen, we're going to take a break now, and we're going to resume this next Wednesday, Be'ezer Hashem, 9:45 p.m. There's still around, it looks like 30 questions that we didn't address.
More?
Okay. I see 30, but I guess, I see there's much. Oh, wow. Okay, 69 questions that we didn't address. Sorry. So it's amazing questions. Somebody says, I'm watching websites that I don't want to say what type of websites they are. Can I still date? I have a serious problem. How a person says, how do I balance my seichel and my midas? Another person says, I don't know if I'm a chsidish bacher, if I'm not a chsidish bacher. I don't know if I'm completely frum or I'm not completely frum. I'm a confused person. Am I allowed to date? I don't know my priorities. Another person says, I'm struggling with so many things in my own family. Can I date? Okay, these are all incredible questions. We're copying and pasting these questions so that me and Rabbi Lipsker can address them. And there's another 70 questions I see that came in. So everybody is invited. Please share it with your friends. This will be available to watch later. You could watch it you could hear it as a podcast. You could watch it on the yeshiva.net. You could watch it on my YouTube channel. It's on COL and the other websites that posted it. So you'll be able to hear it and watch it if you wish. And please pass it on to those you feel it could be helpful for. And part 2 will be next Wednesday, 9:45 p.m. That's in 1 week with myself and Reb Mendel. Be'ezer Hashem bli neder. In the meantime, we wish you all an incredible week and tremendous hatzlacha, mitoch simcha, u'menuchas hanefesh, u'menuchas haguf.
Amen. Thank you very much. And always an extra kapitel tilim for a friend will help us as well. And emunah and bitachon and connecting to the Eibishter. The Eibishter will help everyone find their shidduch. There was once an elder bacher that told the Rebbe, "Dafar bracha af kriyas yamsuf." So the Rebbe said, "Ki kriyas yamsuf." It's not kriyas yamsuf. It's not The Eibishter will make it happen easily and swiftly for everyone who needs. B'simcha v'tuv leivav. Thank you again.
Amen. Amen. Those like Kikriyas Yamsa for Alaman.
Amen.